to me, I have great gifts because of ADHD, like pattern recognition, the ability to hyperfocus, the ability, I don't like to say to think outside the box because to me there is no box, but to be a creative problem solver, like I have a lot of great gifts because of it. But the cons are understanding that I burn out easily, I overwhelm easily, and understand like rest is important, it's vital. I have to take time to rest. So I think for me, when it comes to my identity, it's something I kind of lead with because it kind of shapes a lot of mainly everything, how I parent, how I interact, like it shapes all of that.
Welcome to Unpacked Culture Chronicles. I'm Danielle Marshall, an equity strategist and executive coach, and I'm thrilled to have you here. This podcast is all about exploring cultural differences, similarities, and the ways that we can begin to bridge across them. Together, we're going to dive into meaningful conversations with guests from all walks of life. We'll share stories, insights, and practical strategies for navigating the complexity of culture in our workplaces, communities, and personal lives. Hello, Latrice. I am so excited to have you here today. So my guest today is Latrice Prater. She is the CEO at Digital Solutions Team, where she leads an operations agency that's dedicated to equipping female entrepreneurs with cutting-edge technical solutions. And I'll say this, I was really looking forward to this call because we're going to dive into a conversation we have yet to have on this podcast, and we're going to talk a little bit about neurodivergence. And, you know, it's interesting that we haven't been able to have this conversation yet because I know I've had guests who identify as having some type of neurodivergence. It's so prevalent in our communities, in our workplaces. And so I'm super excited to be able to have this conversation with you because not only does this represent one of your identities, but you are doing a lot of work with others to figure out how to sort of bridge across the divide, if you will. And so, Latrice, just excited to have you here. So welcome.
Excited to be here for sure.
Yeah. So why don't you just kick us off? I always ask our guests as they're coming in to just tell us a little bit more about you.
Wow. Okay, that's always loaded to me, but a little bit about me. Again, my name is Latrice Prater. I am originally from Washington, D.C. I currently live on the outskirts of Austin, Texas. So I'm a wife and mom of three, and that keeps me busy along with business. Um, what else? I mean, I graduated top 10 in high school. I was in the military. I've held a million jobs, but starting my business was probably the thing that I've done that I'm most proud of because I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, like always, because I'm hard-headed and I'm stubborn and I don't like being told what to do. So I was like, I need to do something for myself because, yeah, I'm tired of listening to folks.
Yeah,
And
I'm laughing as you say that because I'm sure there are a lot of listeners out there who probably have similar feelings about the workplace environment.
yes.
But we all can't go into business. Somebody's got to work at the end of the day for us as well. So I'll just put that out in the air. But you know, Latrice, I wanted to talk, and I guess we'll just dive right in. When we were first connecting, one of the things that you shared with me is that you were diagnosed with ADHD later in life. And so I'm really interested in understanding like what that experience was like for you, maybe how it changed how you understood yourself.
That experience was interesting. Honestly, for me, I was already seeing a psychiatrist because I have anxiety and bipolar too. So I was already seeing someone and I went to therapy regularly, but she gave me um, a resource to look at, and it was from Attitude Mag. It's like ADD Mag, but Attitude Mag. And I was looking through the resource, and I kind of just went throughout the website, and I saw a quiz on there about ADHD, and I just took the quiz literally, and it said you should talk to you should talk to someone.
Okay.
So that's what I did. I went back and told her I took the quiz. This is what it said. And then she did her own assessment. And sure enough, in my 30s, I was diagnosed with ADHD. And in that moment, I was confused because to me, when I hear ADHD, I think of hyper little boys. And I am a grown woman with children. So I'm like, this this does not make sense. The math is not mathing for me. So I really went down a rabbit hole because I needed to understand what ADHD was and what that meant for me as a woman because I had no knowledge of what that was and what it looked like and how it showed up, right? Um, so the more I learned about ADHD, actually, the more intrigued I became, and my hyper focus was learning everything about it. Like, how does this affect me? What is, you know, I started to notice that a lot of the symptoms with ADHD are the same as some of the symptoms as my anxiety and some of the symptoms of my bipolar. And I remember asking my therapist, like, wait a minute, so how do we know that I
Mm,
have all these other things? Because apparently, ADHD can look like all of these things. And I remember her telling me, okay, well, this is why you have this is why you have this. And I was assessed for those things too. So I was like, okay, I get it. But it changed a lot for me in the way that I started to maneuver after that because I started to realize, okay, there is a reason why I am not productive for 8 hours of the day. Like, you get a good 4 hours out of me, and then my brain is shot. There's a reason why I can, like, have a burst of energy and do so much work in 2 hours than most people can do in 2 days. It's
sure.
literally the way I am built. And learning more about my brain and how it showed up for me helped me to understand how to, like, craft my day, how to work around it. So, and it also allowed me to understand what it meant to give myself grace. So
Mm,
it definitely helped a lot to
yeah.
have the diagnosis.
So you're touching on like such a range of things in this description that you gave because
Yeah.
the first thing that I want to sort of call out that you said is, you associated ADHD with little boys, right? And I'm thinking about again, growing up as a Gen Xer, we did know about ADHD, probably less information than we have
Mhm.
now, but again, it was mainly thought of as a childhood problem, particularly little boys. They're wild, they're crazy, they can't sit
Mhm.
down, pay attention, and so there was a particular narrative around that. And I'm hearing you loud and clear, like, I was in my 30s, I'm grown, like I have a job, but it's still presenting. But I'm also appreciating that you've now woven in the fact that the other identities that you have and other diagnoses also interplayed with that.
Mhm.
Um, I just, oh gosh, I have so many questions about that. Like, I'm like, where do I go with this? Because what I'm wondering is like, when you go to get diagnosed, like, are doctors regularly checking for the fact that people might have multiple diagnoses, or are they
Mhm.
only honing in on one? What was your experience around that?
To be honest, when I first started seeing a psychiatrist, which was many years ago, it started with one, right? It started with one diagnosis, and at that time, it was just mood disorder. And I was in California, and I was seeing a doctor who it was a male, and I went to him for a while. He gave me medication, but I will say, when it comes to the medical arena, a lot of people have a hard time with listening. And because I remember telling him, like, I think it's more to it than just a mood disorder, and
Sure.
trying to explain to him, like, other symptoms, other things that were happening. Um, but it wasn't until I came to Texas and I found my current therapist, and I kinda just put everything on the table, like, "Look, this is kinda how I feel. I feel like there's a little bit of this, a little bit of this." I mean, I've never mentioned ADHD because I woulda never thought, but I knew, like, there's some depression here, there's some anxiety here, and she just took it all in and literally assessed everything. So, she kind of was able to give me my full diagnosis. Like, she started with one still. She was like, "Okay, it's not a mood disorder. I can definitely see, generalized anxiety disorder." And we were there. And then later on, the bipolar 2 came from the depression, but there are hints of what they call, like mania. So I have some high times as well.
Mhm.
And ADHD was random. It came simply because I took a quiz. It was not on the radar at all. So I don't know if it would have been on her radar either, because it's just something that neither one of us thought of because honestly, what I put in her head was anxiety and depression. So those were the things that we dug into.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm taking away something else from that, and I think about all the times, like, I've personally gone to the doctor, and you do tell them because 'cause they're gonna ask you when you walk in, like, "What's wrong? What's bothering you
Mhm,
today?" And so if you say, like, "I have a stomach ache, I have a headache," or whatever it is, that's the thing that they're tending to focus on, but maybe not sort of zooming
mhm,
out to look at this holistically.
mhm.
And so I'm wondering what type of advice you might have for other people who are looking to figure out what's going on with them. Like they might think they have ADHD or they might think they're bipolar, but they don't. How do they ask about that?
Honestly, I think the best way to do it instead of putting the diagnosis in someone's head, because I did that. I was like, I think it's anxiety, a little bit of depression. Put the symptoms in their head because since the symptoms can kind of range or spread across different diagnoses, then they kind of have to test for all the different things,
Yeah.
right? So I think now, of course, hindsight is 2020. I would have led with these are the things that I am dealing with and let her kinda explore from there.
Yeah, so let her kinda lean on her expertise because I know
Yes.
everybody thinks they're a doctor or a scientist, whatever it is nowadays, because we have Google, but we are not. Maybe some people
Exactly.
out there are, but, like, let the people who are professional do their jobs.
Yes.
So something else I wanted to touch on is as we were talking about this fact that like you were diagnosed later in life, there are a
Mhm.
lot of women right now that are getting diagnosed later in life in general. And this is often coinciding with the fact that, you know, they're in perimenopause or maybe there's something related to pregnancy. Did any of that impact your own journey?
For me, no. At that time, I was in my early 30s. I think I was 31 or 32. So I wasn't dealing with any hormonal shifts or changes. So I didn't have that layered on top of it. But that is a layer to worry about because when you're diagnosed and you're in perimenopause or menopause, a lot of the times what they don't tell you is that hormonal layer, how that plays a role and how that basically makes your symptoms worse. It makes them louder, harder to deal with. The same things that you could deal with at 30, you no longer can deal with at, 40. So you're in this whole different season and you have to figure out how to navigate this new season because the things that worked for you then don't work for you now because of these hormonal changes. And that's something that I don't think anyone equipped me for. Even my current psychiatrist, I don't think we even had to talk about the hormonal changes and how that would affect my ADHD. And it definitely does.
Yeah, I can imagine so, and I know I shared this briefly with you, but, like, there was a point in time a couple of months ago where I began to wonder if I had ADHD because I was
Mhm.
unable to focus in the way that I traditionally, you know, had been able to, and so I went to my doctor and I said, "I'd like to do, some kind of assessment," and the results came back and she's like, "No, you don't have any attention deficit disorder." She's like, "You just have a problem focusing right now," and so but I make this distinction because I think it's really important. I am at a stage of life now where the hormonal fluxes are
Mhm.
happening, and she's like, "We need to dig into this from a different angle." And so for folks, I'm recommending that people do get tested regardless because at least you know what you're dealing with. Sometimes if
True.
we don't even ask for the assessment, all you know is you can't remember what's going on or you put your keys in the refrigerator, and
Mhm.
I'm like, "That is not helpful." You need to understand why that happened for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And have you like in all the research that you've been doing, have you noticed any differences maybe in how ADHD shows up for women versus men?
I think the main thing is o there are 2 aspects to this in my opinion, right? Of course, with boys versus girls, boys lean towards hyperactive. So that's why most of us think the same thought of hyperactive little boy because they are loud, they're rambunctious, but the boys are also encouraged to be that way.
Sure.
Like
You're
when it
socialized.
comes exactly when it comes to having children, boys are always the ones that you're like they're rambunctious, they play hard, they're
Yeah.
always loud, they do all the things. Little girls are taught differently, So we have societal norms which teach us that we should be mild-mannered and quiet and polite. So we tend to mask our own, I guess our identity in a way, but most of the time, girls tend to have the inattentive version of ADHD. So ADHD has 3 subtypes, and there is inattentive, which is just the lack of focus, like your typical daydreamer, right? And
Okay.
then there's hyperactive. That's the one that's literally bouncing off walls. But sometimes hyperactive is not always outward. Sometimes it's inward.
Huh.
And then there's a combination, meaning you basically have traits from both. I am combination.
Okay. You get the best of both
I
worlds, girl.
get the best of both worlds. But the reason why I say, like, if there's 2 sides to this is because there's societal norms when it comes to girls and women of how we should be, how we should behave. Um, but then there's the Black woman,
Hmm.
right? So then there's a cultural difference because, I mean, I'm not a Gen Xer. I identify as Gen X, even though technically I'm a millennial, but I was a latchkey kid, you know what I mean? Like, I grew up same way y'all did.
We'll accept you.
But we didn't talk about mental health in my house. Like, we my went to my mom and say I'm depressed. She looked at me like, "Child, I gave you something to be depressed." Like, it was just different. Mental health wasn't a thing. So
Yeah.
there's no way in my childhood I would have been diagnosed because to my parents it's like, "You fine. You're all right." We were
Yep.
raised in a generation, what goes on in your house stays in your house. So I wasn't allowed to have problems.
Yeah. No,
So
I mean,
that's what I
that's
mean.
real.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of families were like that. What does feel like it shifted now is because we have social media and like
Mhm.
these kids have access to everything. Even if you might have known you were depressed, right? You could even name you were depressed, but you might not have understood what anxiety meant, or you couldn't break
Mhm.
down ADHD at the 3 levels that you just did, right? This is new information that we're starting to have access to.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of curious, like even as you say what you just did, how has ADHD influenced maybe the way that you think about your identity, particularly because you've had to like grapple with it as an older adult at this point?
How I think about my identity?
Yeah.
I mean, ADHD plays a huge role, I think, in my identity in general because it is my neurological setup, right? It's my brain. So it forms a lot of how I interact or how I function, how I work, how I maneuver. Um, Whether I want to be social or not, my social interactions, because I deal with being overstimulated, too many things happening at once. I can't because I can't filter out any form of distraction. So I hear and perceive everything that's happening around me, which is very overstimulating sometimes. So I think for me, it's given me this what is it? Almost because I've accepted it and I've accepted the pros and the cons,
Mhm.
right? So to me, I have great gifts because of ADHD, like pattern recognition, the ability to hyper focus, the ability, I don't like to say to think outside the box because to me there is no box, but to be a creative problem solver, like I have a lot of great gifts because of it. But the cons are understanding that I burn out easily. I overwhelm
Mhm.
easily. And understand like rest is important. It's vital. I have to take time to rest. So I think for me, when it comes to my identity, it's something I kind of lead with because it kind of shapes a lot of mainly everything, how I parent, how I interact, like, it shapes all of that because I have to always keep in mind, like, okay, doing this may put me past my limits, so I am
Sure.
gonna need some me time after,
Yeah.
or I can't do that because I know that that's gonna overstimulate me or that's gonna overwhelm me. So it definitely has put me in a space of being extremely self-aware.
Yeah, and I hear the self-awareness coming through, and I think what is interesting for me is that for all of us as individuals, like, there are real strengths in who we are, right? The
Mhm,
the identities that we bring to the table, our ways of being in the world, and then there are always gonna be some things that are a little rough around the edges for
mhm,
all of us. But I don't know that I always hear people talk about it maybe with the level of clarity that you have in this instance, because what you're saying is like, "Hey, I know that if I'm in this crowded room and there's a
Mhm.
lot of noise and stimulation, like, it's gonna shut my brain down. I'm not gonna be able to focus."
Yeah.
That means then you get to do something differently. And that's not what I hear for people who have a quote unquote typical, developed sort of perspective on things. I would love for us to be more aware. I think that that is a gift in itself. This episode of Unpacked Culture Chronicles is brought to you by Culture Principles, a coaching and consulting practice helping people build real inclusion from the inside out. Because inclusion isn't just about policies, it's also about our people. And while strong policies matter, it's cultural awareness that brings them to life. Our cultural competency coaching program supports leaders, team members, and change makers alike in showing up with greater clarity, confidence, and care. To learn more, visit us at culture-principles.com/coaching. We'd love to work with you. Latrice, when you think about what is happening inside of you while you're navigating these symptoms versus what the rest of us get to see on the outside, what's the difference?
That's funny. Um, that's funny because especially since like I said, I have combination type, right? So that
Yeah,
means I have half of the hyperactive as well as being inattentive. And I present as organized and I present as always having things together. I always know where everything is, what's happening at all times. I'm never late. I hate being late, honestly. And I also attribute that to being in the military as well, right? Because if you're on time, you're
sure.
late. So because I was in the military at a young age, I was 19, it kind of helped shape some of that. Um, so I present as someone who is well put together, in my opinion. Very organized. Like people
I
come
know
to me
you.
for
I would
all of
agree
that.
with that.
Yes. The chaos, however, lives in my head. That is the difference. So it's constant, like, always thinking or jumping from thought to thought. So just like a person jumps from project to project, my thoughts are the same way. Like there's always inner dialogue, and I am always trying to hold on to everything inside of here that it becomes overwhelming. It's just like I can start my day and I think about all the things I need to do, and I am instantly overwhelmed. And now I can't do anything because I've shut down just by thinking about everything I need to do.
Uh-huh.
So that's the biggest difference is what you see is completely different. And I think it's because on the outside, I can control my environment. Everything is in order, clean, tidy, so I can try to focus, but I cannot control the chaos that lives in my brain.
Yeah. I th- I can see that, like, that's so complicated for people because I know you work for yourself,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking about what this means for people that are in work environments where they may not be able to control all of these various factors, and like what are the strategies that people can tap into to help them in that moment.
To be honest, when it comes to being an employee, because I was an employee for a while, with ADHD, not knowing, but also it when I got the diagnosis, it made a lot of things make sense. Like it made things like why I had such a hard time with the traditional work dynamic because of course I didn't know, so I couldn't get any type of accommodations.
Right.
But being in an office, especially one because I worked for a lot of startups, so they weren't traditional corporate, so they were more so open and loud, and everybody's laughing, everybody's talking. Somebody's on a phone with a client, you hear the entire conversation. And for me, that is way too much going on. Like I can't even hear myself think. So, at that time, I would have to do things like go work outside or go work in a conference room. Like I had to go find a place of solitude so I can think. I did a lot of customer service jobs though. So I was able to kind of like walk around and take my calls. So I would walk into the hallway sometimes just to take my calls because I didn't want to hear everybody else because it would
Sure.
mess with what's going on in my own brain. Um, but one of the biggest things I think I dealt with too is not realizing the element of RSD, the rejection sensitivity,
Mhm.
and how that plays a huge role because, especially as an employee, I used to always have an issue with and did not like how people would speak to people. Like, there's a way that you can do things, and I don't like the way you're handling it. Like, you don't have to speak to me in that manner. You're not above me. So I am very sensitive to criticism, but it matters about, tone, and it matters about the way it's done. Like my mom said, you can get more flies with honey, right? You can talk to
Mhm.
me in a certain way where I can receive it, but, like, don't critique me in public.
Yeah.
Don't, tell me how I'm doing something bad in front of everybody because I'm going to shut down.
Okay. So I am just learning about a lot of this, and so I'm kind of following the thread as you're talking, but, like, is rejection sensitivity something that is more prevalent for folks who have ADHD, or is it more of a trait that is evolved in you?
Actually, it is more prevalent in folks with ADHD, to be honest. Um, It's one of those that and the fact that most people with ADHD also have a very like, we're very keen to social justice. So when we feel like someone or something is not right, we we don't I don't know, we feel more intense about it, right? So
Mhm.
everything is a little bit more intense when it comes to our feelings. That's why emotional regulation is a thing, because everything is more intense. We feel more intensely. And just justice is huge, because if I see you mistreat someone, I am automatically upset and I will defend whoever I need to defend in any moment, because that's how I'm wired to operate. So that's definitely not just a me thing. That's something that's most ADHDers deal with.
Yeah. I have a deep appreciation for that because I'm thinking about now all the times where I've done facilitation of equity work, and there's
Mm,
always someone or several someones in the crowd that are particularly passionate,
yeah.
and I had not stopped to consider if that is part of that before. So now as I'm doing this moving forward, I will have to, like, kind of tap in and see if, if that's a factor in it. Not that it changes the
Mhm,
discussion, because I want people to be able to voice themselves regardless, but I think there is a sensitivity that has to exist for both maybe employers, but
mhm.
also people like me as a consultant. If I'm coming in to work with your group, like, I'm working with the entire group and people arrive as they arrive. So
Yes.
being able to have tools. And I guess to that point, right, because I'm a tool person, because I want the audience to have maybe some things to walk away with. If you know that someone has rejection sensitivity,
Mhm.
what can we do to be more supportive of you?
To be honest, I think it's more of a I tend to meet people where they are, right? So difficult conversations have to be had sometimes. That's just the nature of the beast. It happens. Um, but I am always very mindful of the words that I use. I am always very mindful of the tone that I use. And when I say that, I mean, like, I never want to sound like I'm being accusatory, or I'm pointing fingers, or I am not showing that, basically, like, hey, we all make mistakes. So this could happen. It happens. So to learn from it, this is how we move forward. But showing understanding and showing compassion, right, in the moment, because it's one thing to say, "Hey, you didn't do this right. You didn't." It's another to be like, "Okay, you made a mistake. We all make mistakes, but how can we get better? How can we do better? What can we walk away from this? Understanding now." So we can put in, better systems so it doesn't happen again. So I think it's just meeting someone with compassion and understanding, and meeting them where they are.
Mhm. I think that's a beautiful example of, there's a saying, "A rising tide lifts all boats."
Mhm.
So if I am trying to be more sensitive in my communication to someone who has ADHD, and in particular is experiencing sensitivity rejection, the fact that I am kinder, more empathetic, gentler in that conversation not only supports that individual, but I
Mhm.
think it also affects the culture of the organization or the company overall, because I kind of want to work at a place, regardless of how my brain is designed, where people care for one another, where we are speaking with kindness. And, there's accountability, things still need to get done, but we don't have to
Right.
be nasty about it.
Exactly. Exactly, and I think
Yeah.
that's the part that some people miss.
Well, we are living in a world where a lot of people apparently are missing that now. But we can make decisions to not be that person, if you will.
Right.
So I do think there's accountability. And, I just kind of want to talk a little bit more about the communication strategies. Like, again, what can both, neurodivergent and neurotypical people do to communicate more effectively if you're thinking whether it's at work or at home?
Um, I think when it comes to that, as someone with ADHD, I am very strong on my boundaries. I have no problem with voicing my boundaries. I will tell you if something is not going to work, if I don't work past this time, I mean it. Like I
Good
stick
for you.
to yeah, I stick to my boundaries because literally my boundaries equal my sanity. So if I allow anyone to disrupt that, then that means I'm allowing you to mess with my sanity and my peace. And I can't have that, right? Because burnout for me lasts so much longer than it does for a neurotypical person. Coming out of
Mm,
burnout is the hardest thing you can do when you are neurodivergent. So what I've noticed sometimes with neurotypical people, because they are more linear, right? They can sit down and they can work from 8 to 5. They can choose what they focus on. I don't have that. I don't have the ability. I can't always choose what I focus on because the thing I need to focus on a lot of the times is what I don't want to do. My brain is like, no, we don't feel like it. We're not doing that. Okay. It's not giving enough dopamine. And you hear things like, well, why can't you just or won't you just, you know, prioritize? Won't you time block? And
right.
it's like, that sounds great in theory. However, that's not the way my brain is set up. I can make my calendar amazing all day with all the time blocking and not follow it at all. It does not matter if my brain is like, no, we're not doing it. So it's also the inclusive language, right? Because you do equity. It's the inclusive language. It's understanding that just because you can doesn't mean I can, and just because I cannot doesn't mean you should try to force what works for you onto me. So that's what I
I'm
mean
like,
by
I
respect
feel
my
like I need to
boundaries.
replay that over and over again because I know that we're having this particular conversation, but I think that applies in so many contexts right
Yeah.
now. There's this quote that says, "We do not see the world as it is; we see
Mm,
the world as we are."
yes.
And even as I'm listening to you right now, right, like the desire to place like, well, this strategy works for me, so Latrice, you should go out and
Mm,
do it, is because we can't get out of our own heads sometimes, and we only think through how we see the world,
yes.
right?
Yes.
As who we are as individuals. Um, so actually, I want to pivot a little bit because you wrote a book.
I
So I want to
did.
know all about this book. Tell us about it. Tell us the name. Tell us, what you were. Yes, I'm sure you have a copy
I'm like, where's my book?
nearby.
Yes, the excitement. So yes, I wrote a book. It's called The Chaos Queen: Embracing the Mess and Succeeding with ADHD. My little book. Um, Honestly, I can't even say what made me write this book. I think it was a combination of I had written a ton of blogs and I do a lot of writing in general. And I was like, you know what? Why not turn this into something? And that's literally how it came about. So I wanted to create a tool, so to speak, for women with ADHD, and I always lean towards that. But it was more so from a business standpoint too, because I'm a CEO. But a lot of it was talking about, you know, our superpower and like understanding that we live in chaos. That's just what it is. And accepting it, but learning how to work with it. Because sometimes, even in the most chaotic moments, we have some of our best ideas.
Mm,
Understanding that what looks like I'm distracted to you, it's actually my way of paying attention. And that played out even in team dynamics. When I have meetings with my team, because I have people who are neurotypical on my team, of course, and we have a meeting and I'm looking at my other screen or my other monitor, and it looks like I'm distracted and I'm doing something. And I've had it where someone be like, "Are you listening to me?" And I'm like, "I hear every word you're saying." and
Yeah.
I'm able to even offer input and give the best ideas. It's just that when you are trying to force me to sit and just be like this, sometimes this, it's just me and you. Look me in my eyes, listen to what I'm saying. You could possibly lose me, especially in meetings. But if you allow me to kind of tinker a little bit,
Mhm.
you realize that that's actually what helps my brain to focus.
Yep.
So it just my focus looks different.
Yeah, I mean, like, I appreciate that because I'm thinking about all the meetings that I've sat in with people that are doodling, and doesn't
Mhm.
myself included, or they're fiddling with something, and then the person up front is like, "Are you even paying attention?" And they're like, "Yeah, actually, you said in third quarter XYZ is gonna happen," and, like, they know better than most people in the room because they were listening deeply,
Yes.
but it doesn't always come across that way, so I hear you on that.
Yes.
So all right, so going back to this book for a second, who's
Mm.
the target audience for this and like what can they walk away with?
The target audience, of course, I would say is mainly women because, as you said, we view the world from who we are, right? So I'm a woman. I can identify with women. I can speak to what we go through, and I can speak to that well. And I think what you mainly walk away with is the acceptance of who you are now, right?
Mm,
If you, especially most of us, are getting diagnosed later in life, so this allows you to understand, okay, this is now the dynamic of my brain. This is who I am, and this is how I'm going to be. So I need to learn how to make my environment work for me. So
yeah.
it gives that type of or those tools, should I say,
Mhm.
understanding that you will pivot a lot, you will have all the ideas, you will have to be strong or firm on your boundaries and why that's important, and why rest is important, why having the right tribe is important because community is still big, especially
Uh-huh.
for someone who's neurodivergent. So walking away with understanding your identity, but I think more so accepting it as well.
Okay. And that's a beautiful sentiment, right? We are
Mhm.
who we are.
Mhm.
And can we accept that? And then can we if even if we're struggling with something, can we then start finding ways to mitigate that, right? It's not a bad
Yeah.
thing. We all have something that we have to figure out and work through.
Yes.
Um, I am you mentioned a moment ago when you started talking about the book Superpowers. So, as we get ready to round out this call, I'm curious what you think your superpower is related to your ADHD and like how does that look in your own business?
It's so funny because lately I have noticed that on social media, a lot of people are saying how much they hate when people say that ADHD is a superpower.
Mm,
And I am one of those people who is guilty of doing that. But I also am self aware enough to understand that I know that it brings some cons, right? Like I say it's my superpower because of the pattern recognition, the creative problem solving, and the flow of ideas that I have constantly. Literally, I can pull clarity in the midst of anything. So I can talk to the most chaotic person, like in a second, tell them, okay, this is the problem. This is what you need to do. This is how you need to do it. Like I see it plain as day.
yeah.
So that's why I say it's my superpower with the understanding of like, I know I also have a kryptonite. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But I don't want to downplay the fact that I have great strengths because of ADHD, right? So my superpower for me is definitely I'm a creative problem solver. I have ideas for days. All any client that I've worked with have seen or not just seen, love to ideate with me. They love to do any type of brainstorming with me because of that.
I will attest to that. You and I have sat down and done some ideation together, and you
Yes.
come with a whole bunch of ideas, and I'm actually like, slow down.
Yes.
I need to think about this a little bit more. But I'm also appreciating what you said around like maybe how the community of people that have ADHD are
Mhm,
not necessarily liking this term of superpower. So thanks for introducing that.
mhm.
And I'm a proponent of, multiple things can be true at the same time. So you
Yes.
can have certain things about your ADHD diagnosis that are absolutely strengths, and then there are going to be some
Yes.
things that may feel limiting at times. And, isn't that life in general though?
It is.
So, yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, so let me ask one final question to you. Is there anything that's coming up in your business that you want to share with listeners?
Oh, wow. So 2026, because it's approaching so fast, is actually the year where I am introducing some new offers, and they are primarily for my ADHD audience. I am putting together what I call a bot shop. So AI
Okay.
has been big. Everybody is trying to figure out how to incorporate AI in their business, how to use it, what's the best way to use it. I am creating a bot shop specifically for the ADHD entrepreneurs. So basically, it's the core, I would say, core functions you need in your business, but also that help you in a way that works for how your brain works, right? We have issues with prioritizing. So there are things that will help you prioritize. There were things that will help you focus a little more. Things that take away the mundane tasks that we hate to do. So the bot shop is literally going to be only for ADHD entrepreneurs. Also toward the end of 26, because it's going to take a little while to build out, is I am actually going to build a SaaS, and it's going to be called Focus Flow, and
Okay.
it's going to be an all-in-one tool for business for ADHD entrepreneurs. So basically, my whole focus is shifting a little bit more to create services and resources for women like me. Because to be honest, when I first started sharing about my ADHD, I did not realize there were a lot of women, especially women of color, who were in business that were like me. And now I see it all the time, and I see how
Mhm.
women tell me like, "Oh gosh, I just got diagnosed and I had no idea, and now I'm trying to figure out how do I work with this?" So I am just tapping more into that.
Yeah, I love that. We can speak from a place of strength when it's our community in particular. We know it
Yes.
inside and out. And so I love that you're able to put your brain power to something that is going to elevate other women entrepreneurs who are also dealing with ADHD right now. Latrice, it has been a pleasure to sit down and chat with you. Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to me today.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure for me as well.
Oh,
I
and
would
I
do it
did
all
not
over
ask
again.
you. Yeah, we can absolutely do this again. The one thing that I forgot to ask is where can
Oh,
people find you?
oh my goodness. LinkedIn. I've been on LinkedIn a lot, actually. Of course, just Latrice Prater. Also Instagram at the Virtual Pro. And if you really want to learn about me and my agency, it's the dstagency.com.
Okay, and we will make sure that we drop all of that in the show notes for folks as well. So, Latrice, again, thank you so much. Have a lovely rest of your year, and we'll talk soon.
All righty.
Take care. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. It makes a big difference in helping us grow this community. And if you're looking for coaching or resources to take your cultural awareness to the next level, visit us at culture-principles.com/coaching. And remember, where curiosity leads, connection follows. Be well.